Welcome back. Good morning. We are starting the next session, which is on display track 1, the Windows to Digital India. And I am requesting Dr. G. Rajeshwaran, CEO of Grantwood Technologies and Fellow Society of Indian Display, to come on the stage and moderate the session. Dr. Rajeshwaran, please. Come.
Thanks. Yeah. No, that's fine. Thank you. So a couple of changes. The talk on marketing that adjoins the next session by Robert O'Brien will not be held. I have his presentation. If somebody wants it, we can share it later. But he's stuck in Tokyo due to a technicality. He had only one page open on his passport, and the boarding pass was not given to him because they need 2 pages on the passport. So he offered to do a WebEx presentation here, but we are not able to sync the time of his availability. But you can do high tech if you want. If people are interested later on, after lunch, we can try a WebEx presentation. He's waiting in Tokyo. But since Dr. In-Jae Chung already gave you a little hint of the market, the rest of us will cover some of the other aspects we disagree upon. Violently disagree. Okay. So Mike Hack will do some job on that later on when he talks about OLED. And I'll also try to put in my 2 cents worth now, okay? So my name is Rajeshwaran. I live in the US, but I've spent last 20 years in Asia, out of which 5 years I spent in India. I was the president of Moser Solar, started up the Greater Noida facilities at the time. So that's for me. My claim to fame is that I developed AMOLED display in 1998. And now it's a huge industry, and now we're arguing about which is bigger, better, finer, going from 0 revenues to almost a $20 billion industry today. So I thank all my colleagues from SID who are here, and we have the pioneers and the veterans of the Korean display industry and the global display industry here present to participate in this event. So please network with all of them, approach them and ask questions. They're going to be here all day. We are at work. We are working for you. So please feel free, and if you don't get a chance to ask, the audience should mingle with our invited speakers and understand the subject matter that we are about to talk to you about. So I was moderating this session, and there are 2 aspects of the session. One is the mobile phone ecosystem, and then there's a technology and market trends. So as I told you, the market trend talks will not be held, but the technology trends talk will be provided by Dr. Sung Tae Shin. And let me talk to you about some of the 2 SID speakers in this event and the adjoining event. First we have starting off with Mr. Josh Folger, who is well known in the Indian electronics industry as electronics, man of electronics. He started the Nokia manufacturing in Chennai, and now he's the head of Foxconn India Holdings and manufacturing almost 100 million phones every year now. Very large size. It's a very positive story of mobile phones in India. So Josh, please come on over. So Josh has a master's degree from University of Texas, but he's been, like me, all over the world. He's worked in US, in India, and Vietnam, and other places. Probably lives at the airport like me. The next speaker would be Dr. Jun Suk. I met him 10, 12 years ago. He doesn't remember. He forgot about me. So I went to Samsung and I met with him. He was a senior VP of Samsung Electronics at the time. He's got another hat on, which is the regional vice president for SID, Society of Information Display, in Asia. So he's going to today talk about his experiences and what needs to be done. And also this particular talk is focusing on flexible AMOLED display that allows various form factors. So he will outline all the challenges and opportunities. Every challenge brings along an opportunity, so don't be worried about challenges. Dr. Suk, please come on up. He's also currently another job, professor in Korea University. Okay. The third speaker is Dr. Marwaha from the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology. He's been with the Indian government for 26 years, and please come on up. And he's now responsible for all the policies for mobile, for hardware manufacturing, electronics, and so on in India. He's done a phenomenal job on the phased manufacturing program that he'll talk about for the mobile business. Remember, mobile phone business in India is an attractive business, and you're going to hear from Josh how big and grand it's going to be. And all of them require a display today, at least one display. Maybe in the future, each mobile phone will have 2 displays or 3. I don't know what the future holds. So we are very interested in what he's going to say. All of you display guys just multiply by 2 or 3 every number he says. That's the opportunity for us. The next speaker, Dr. Shin, will be introduced by Professor Deepak Gupta at the end of these talks. So you can come up a little later, so you can listen to the rest of them and with a proper view of the presentation. So with that, I'm going to moderate the session. That means periodically say some jokes. I'm not talking today, okay? Just to liven up the things. If they say a joke, hopefully it's on me somewhere. So that's the job of a moderator. For the first time in probably a decade, I'm not speaking myself, which is good. Okay, I'm going to keep silent and let the speakers take over. So with that, let me invite Josh Folger to come and kick off his presentation on the mobile phone, the poster child of Indian electronics business. Everything is going to happen on a phone, including buying your vegetables and paying taxes, whatever. Please want to tell us how.
Thank you. Mr. Marwa, it's a pleasure to see you, sir. Dear friends from industry outside India and in India, it's a great pleasure here to represent the Indian mobile industry and talk about a few points about this wonderful industry, which is, I should say, restarted again in the last 2 years. So I have my presentation in 4 buckets. I'll talk a little bit about the global market, which most of you already know. I will talk a little bit about the Indian market, which most of the Indian colleagues very well know, but I just want to highlight a couple of points there. I want to challenge ourselves on the third bucket, saying can India be an electronics manufacturing nation? So I think it's going to be a question, and some thoughts on how that is possible in the fourth bucket. So, with that said, I have been making mobile phones for about 20 years now. So, 1997, I think you can see how the phones roughly look like. The 1100, my time in Nokia is when I started designing and then making phones. And this was in the US, and we had it's a monochrome display, 1.5 inch display. Message, we had a new thing called SMS at that time. And so I used to have a pager and a mobile phone. So in 2001, in Nokia, we heard this term called digital convergence is going to happen, where things in your PC are going to, your digital camera, which was a very big segment at the time, was going to be coming into one device. They also projected that by 2003, that Nokia will have more cameras, digital cameras, than one of the digital camera makers at that time, that we would be the largest camera maker. And we were all a little skeptical at that time. Of course, we were talking about how many displays a phone will have. We had a few phones with 2 displays at that time. The flip phones had, 1 or 2, one in the front, one in the back. Many form factors were being experimented, right about the time 15 to 20 years ago. And today the world is a lot different. It is something like this. And in the session before, the gentleman was presenting about how it can be in the future, flexible displays and things like that. In the industry, we're always looking for the next S-curve, right? What is the next, the hype to decline cycle? I mean, today, people said that the feature phone is on decline stage up there on the right. But then Reliance Jio introduces the live phones with the feature phone 4G, and that disrupts that cycle. So the question is a feature phone back on the, back on the clock, for another growth spurt? We don't know. So I think industry investments, I love the term used before, investment efficiency. Investment efficiency is very key to get products available at the right time. It is very key. So I love the term brought out by the previous speaker. And it's something which we live and die in our industry. And so we always look for opportunities. What is getting on the hype curve? Is it going to be a mass market application, or it's going to die an infant death? So wearables, multiple IoT applications, all these things are, sort of starting to get on this the hype cycle right now. And I think we as industry people, we as a country we as companies have to look at this very, very carefully and then invest our money very, very carefully here. But you have to invest. You have to get on that cycle. Otherwise, you're going to get lost. I also love the comparison given by the gentleman from SID about the number of research papers. So I met a couple of professors from IIT, and I would love to see India on that leaderboard on the number of research papers. I went to school in University of Texas. I was not smart enough to do a PhD. So I'm a sort of a grease monkey. I went on the shop floor, tinkering with my robots, but you have to present papers. So all of these things are important if we want to proceed further and make this an electronic nation. Smartphones, the leaderboard, I mean, I think, Samsung has been on the leaderboard. This is about 2 quarters old. Since this, Huawei is now number 2 globally in smartphones. Number 1 is Samsung, of course. The stack underneath has been very volatile the last 3 years. You see, I should say some quite competent Chinese manufacturers have come and joined this game. And I think it's very similar to what the data I saw with the Chinese manufacturers coming in the display space as well. So we have Huawei, we have Xiaomi, we have Oppo, Vivo, joining this leaderboard globally, not just in India. And the interesting thing you'll see a little later that the leaderboard in India is not very different. It says that now this industry is global. So yes, while it's great to think about India, it's also very important to think that this is part of the global ecosystem. The global brands have a play here. They bring world-class technology, and our consumers are going to appreciate that. So maybe a closer snapshot, of the, and this is again a month-by-month segment. It is not necessarily an indicator, but definitely tells you about the industry space and what is growing. Now, I don't know whether I'm going to help, the OLED penetration. Maybe I'm setting you up for success here, but clearly, at least in the mobile space, definitely the OLED penetration is increasing. And as in the words of the previous speaker, supply chain is very, very key. Mobile phone space is 2 billion devices a year. And so capacity is very, very important. Yes, it's smaller than a TV. So in square meters, yes, you can get a lot more phones, but this is something which we fight for. OLED allocation is like the big word, which the top smartphone providers baffle, struggle with, every quarter. Getting this allocation is almost like getting Qualcomm chipset allocation. So I think this is the challenge. LCD versus OLED. Which is better for the application? Will I get the capacity for it? Will I get the price point here? So all of these things have to be looked at in this space. So that's the global picture, right? Coming to India, India is a microcosm of the world, and India today is number 2 in smartphones, next to China. India has just crossed US in terms of smartphone penetration, which somebody like me who has been in the mobile industry for 20 years, India was not on the board, and I'll show you a slide a little later. So this is just pure. All I can tell you that this didn't happen. There are many things in India that just happened, but I have to assure you that this is a very concerted effort by the government, which has driven us here, to this position of leadership here. So, right from challenging the costs of the minutes which we speak, promoting the bandwidth, the network bandwidth. So the government has done so many efforts, I'll say really over the last 20 years. And I'll say more so in the last 10 years, which has driven us to this leadership position here. So now, along with this, you will also see that 90% growth in mobile phone production. And I'll also talk about this a little bit. So India is increasingly becoming a manufacturing location again. It was, and I'll show you a slide later what happened when we had a small hiccup a couple of years ago. India is today the top growth market in smartphones. India is also the top growth market in feature phones. So Africa usually follows a cycle 2 or 3 years later than us. I don't know whether they're making investments in 4G or not, but India definitely is on the growth trajectory here in mobile phones. The smartphone to a penetration rate is increasing in India. So India has been predominantly a feature phone. Yes, every month India sells about 25 million phones, and yes, a lot of that is feature phones. So today it's about 50-50, right? But this trend will decrease, so that because the consumers are looking for that experience, they're looking for the service in the products, and it is changing. So, and this brings a big dynamic. When a country like India enters the smartphone space, it really changes the dynamics of the industry. India is today, so I came back to India in 2005. The mobile penetration rate in India was 7% at that time. Today in the cities, it's 300%, 200%. Everybody having multiple SIM cards, multiple phones. It has changed. The rural penetration is over 90% today. India today is 13% of the unit share globally. So it is a big number. It is a big number. 2 odd billion devices are made, and it is 300 million plus 320 million phones are sold in India. This is the current leaderboard on smartphones. And for those of you who've been following this up, it has been a roulette. It's been changing, every quarter, at least every year it has been changing. So the current leaderboard today is Xiaomi has equaled Samsung in number 1 in smartphones. Samsung, of course, leads in feature phones as well in India. But if you look at the other dynamic there, a big portion of the manufacturers who are successful today in India are coming from China. So clearly, there has been they've been able to provide the value proposition at the right cost for the Indian consumer. So they've been able to get that market share penetration here. Okay. Again, when you look at the global scenario, not much has changed, except for Apple. Apple has not got a very large play in India yet. But I think, it's very true, what Ashwin said in the beginning. India is many countries in one. Yes, it has in Australia. When you look at the population demographic, yes, there is something in between Brazil, and yes, there is something much below, which is in Africa. Sub-Saharan Africa figures there. So we come to, what we do, at least say, what me and Mr. Marwa have been doing the last, 10 odd years. The Indian electronics industry is growing, not just in mobiles, but in all segments. The production, the current and the future projected growth is about 20% CAGR, which is not too bad, really. I mean, when you look at all segments, I think the growth definitely is very high. Now, this is something which I don't need to promote this to Mr. Marwa. I think he knows this. But in India is a big country. We have 1.2 odd billion people, and the challenge we have is gainful employment today. Yes, there is talent, but talent has to be trained. Yes, there is willingness, but they need the opportunity. Electronics industry today provides this massive opportunity today. Electronics industry is very labor intensive. I think people talk about labor content in textiles. I think the labor content in electronics is equally high, or close enough, at least in the front end process. In China, over 20 million people are employed there in this space. The electronics industry is actually 2 trillion. I'm saying 1.8, but it's like 2 trillion global opportunity. As I said before, 2 billion phones are made. The supply chain of electronics and display supply chain was mentioned there. Each category of electronic parts, be it PCB, be it batteries, be it the semicon, be it display, be it the mechanics. All these items are ecosystems of their own. These are all massive investment opportunities, massive employment opportunities, and they are a global supply chain. When the Fukushima, disaster happened, suddenly we said we don't have any suppliers in Japan, and we said, yeah, sure, But about 3 days later, we learned that the dielectrics for the capacitors were made in that area only. So the supply chain is truly a global supply chain. We have 5 levels, 5-tiered supply chain in electronics. Now, the good news is that it's global. The great news is that it's an opportunity for India to get on that bandwagon and develop industries. And it's not just electronics, it's also metal. I cannot tell you the number of CNCs, which are today machining out, aluminum frames. Used to be steel casings, now aluminum frames. So it is very mechanical, intensive as well. So there is, just like the automotive industry, the electronics industry is multiple tiered. The fourth point there is one leader category like mobile phones. If you're able to establish the supply chain in India or any country, it is able to support other reasonably similar electronic devices very easily. And so there is a good sort of horizontalization in the space as well. So just as in the display space, an LCD AMOLED can be used both for a TV application or a mobile phone. Similarly, you can produce a mobile phone. You can produce any IoT devices, set-top boxes, and so on and so forth. Now, one of the things which India has a big problem with is export. We don't have the mindset. And this is something which I don't understand in a way, but one of the things we did about 10 years ago, actually more than 10 years ago in Nokia, was we exported to 130 countries worldwide. Every market mentioned there was supplied right from India. So I know it can be done. So, the gentleman from NITI Aayog was talking about net zero. This is how you achieve net zero. You are going to have imports of certain things, but you have to export to achieve the net zero, which is one of the pillars of the Digital India vision. So this has to be in our mindset. When you look at all the countries which have been active in this space in the last 20 years, Japan, Taiwan, Korea, lately Vietnam, China, Malaysia, Singapore, all these countries were export-led. I understand India is a big market, but you have to export. And when you export, what happens is you have a larger capacity to bring your different tiers of your supply chain. So, and I can tell you from experience that we did that before, and I think we will do this more. I have this is a slightly busy slide, so I'll probably skip this. Maybe I'll have Raj take his picture, and then I will skip. Yes. So, but this is a summary. So this is something which, I should really say, Mr. Marwa is driving this, and we are helping him in this exercise. Mr. Marwa will talk more about this in his presentation, but we have set ourselves a very aggressive target for 2019 and then 2025. The two sort of phases there, and it's going to be a big game changer. And again, this is the phase manufacturing program. I think it is extremely practical, and I think India should be very pragmatic about hitting this phase manufacturing program. And this is giving you almost a very well thought out, step-by-step approach on how you can do backward integration, value addition in India. So we have started with mobile phones today, and then we went into a few components like chargers, mechanics, and things like that. Today there are about 100 factories which have started in the last 2 years. And it's a result of this phase manufacturing program. The government is so enthused with this program that this phase manufacturing program is going to be promoted for all electronic categories. And I'll again let Mr. Marwa cover that in his session. Okay. A lot of people who come to India find it challenging. Yes, of course, it is challenging. But at least, so when I landed back in India about 13 years ago, my mandate was to make 2 million phones a month. And I had zero confidence in that, because I went into the airport where we will receive parts, because everything has to be just in time. And the people have to be super competent, to fix things, fix issues, be it material quality issues, be it machine downtime. You have to be very, very capable. Logistics has to be just in time. And we had to build the supply capability. Oh, I said, this is impossible. But then I learned. I went and studied different industries. My benchmark was Moser-Bayer. I entered Moser-Bayer. I saw the media handling they were doing for memory devices, and it was in such a huge scale. I said that, great, this can be done. Technically, yes, no problem. The Indian engineer, Indian technician can handle this. Labor. I went to the garment industry. There's a fantastic garment industry called, in Chennai, called Intimate Fashions. There are 2,000 women working, and today it's 6,000 working fantastically well. Truly world-class operation, high productivity. These were the two benchmarks which I saw. These were not from the mobile phone industry. You have to look a little outside and then figure out what you can do here. and end of the day, make it happen. So the first year, the goal was to make 2 million phones a month. I ended up making 4 million phones a month by end of the year. Yes, it's possible, okay? We have some challenges. Yes, there is China, which gives a lot of incentives, Vietnam, which gives a lot of incentives. Indonesia has come on the board the last couple of years. They've gotten their act together. So this is something which the Indian government is very, very aware of. The competition is there because this industry is big and everybody wants it in their backyard. So the competition is there, right? And in India, right, these are the challenges we see. You know, I love the Indian road. I mean, I think Delhi roads, at least in this neighborhood, are great. But this is Chennai after rains, you know, Chennai after the monsoon season, you know. So you got potholes, you got unregulated traffic, optional traffic lights, dividers. You see a hodgepodge of things. And driving in the Indian road, especially if you have a low clearance car, you know, you experience the joys. And sometimes, you know, you experience this also when you're trying to do production operations in India, right? You know, yes, we were hit with demonetization, GST, we have challenges in labor laws, approvals, clearances. See, the challenge is that the center policy may be great, right? And it is. I mean, I can assure you that the policy in the center government is great. But about 70 to 80% of the implementation of the policy happens in the state levels. So if you work with a, you know, really truly world-class state, it's no problem. You know, things are very clear for you. If your particular state or province is not quite tuned to this, you land into issues, okay? We do have these challenges, right? But I have to tell you that it's still possible in India. You just need to be. You know, I used to joke 13 years ago, it's like people say that, why didn't you come to the meeting on time? Well, it's traffic. I said, you knew already that traffic at this time will be bad. You know, and you have to dodge a few potholes on the way, and then the, you know, errant policeman. You need to plan. It's about planning. It's about planning, it's about resourcing. It's about the will to getting things done, right? And that's what we've done in this industry. So if you can see what happened, you know, after this Make in India was announced in 2014, you can see what has happened in the mobile phone space is we were down to about 40 million phones being produced here. This is again production, okay? 40 million phones produced here. And this year, I think Mr. Marwa knows the numbers better than me, but I think we will come close to 200 million phones being produced in India out of a total market of 300 million. And I think that's incredible. That's incredible for anybody. There are about 100,000 people employed directly making phones today. And our goal is by 2019, 2020, is to make that 500 million. Is it possible? I personally think we'll come close to it. With the current government policy thrust, the level of ambition which is today there, I think we can definitely make that happen. I mean, India is clearly on the leaderboard. If you look at even that smartphone penetration, we are green today. We are now number 2. So India is green across the board in all these parameters. So this is what gives me the confidence to say that if you have a will, if you have the business case, if you have the business opportunity, yes, you can pull this through. Just to close, you know, just a couple of lessons learned, at least from my end. I think it's very key. You know, I think the first one is very important that you have to anchor yourself. I think the Make in India, the Digital India is a great anchor. You cannot ask for anything more. I think you have to anchor your India mission based on that. You know, what is my target? You know, what am I going to achieve by 2020 as a company, as an industry? 2, you have to work with the government. You have to work with the government at the center and at the state. You need to help them help you. They're always ready to help. You need to help them help you, okay? Third, I think anybody who's running a business here understands that you got to diversify your product and customer base. Don't just get on one pony and ride it, right? You got to have a backup, right? You got to have, that's your business. You got to manage your business. Fourth is you got to build a proper local team. It's, you don't have to 100% localize, right? You can bring in experts as needed, but you have to build a local culture. You need to have values. India is how would I say that openly? You know, India is a very religious country. We have 800 gods or more, right? More, thank you, yes. So India is very values driven. So I know that business sometimes you don't talk too much about values, but India is very values driven. And you have to appeal to the heart. So that the guy will then it appeals to his head, and then you execute with your guts. So you have to build that local culture, which is acceptable, still have the global mindset, but then push it locally here. Lastly, it's maybe from my company, maybe it's me. Just make it happen. Don't give me any excuses. I think it's where there's a will, there's a way. So I wish the display industry, as you talk about making things happen, I think the mobile phone industry is a good example that it is possible to make it in India and make it happen. So I wish everybody, experts who have come all the way from Korea and other places, investors in India, abroad, students, academia, I wish you all the best in driving this through. Thank you.
So Josh also brings some really good social values. You said how many employment for women? How many people are employed in your company? How many women?
We have about 90%.
90% of the staff are women. So this is an opportunity for manufacturing that is given employment in this country for people that need it. So that's not only that. You should not only is it social values here, which he said he learned from his an answer given to you by your mother. So to do anything at all, help needy people. Other thing you didn't say was you run the biggest fleet of buses in Chennai, despite all those potholes. And how many buses do you operate every day? 200 buses. So Foxconn India is doing a lot of other things too. So the roads are important to you, not only for your products coming in, components coming in, but for employees coming in. So with that, I just want to say that the trend in mobile phones is getting more and more high performance, more interaction, multimedia, and the trend is moving to higher performance displays even in mobile phones. So OLED is getting to be a trend. So I've been pushing along with some of my colleagues here for AM OLED manufacturing in India. But I'm not going to talk about that today. But what I'll let Professor John Suk talk about is the next generation of OLEDs that need to be made. And the mobile phone form factors that are demanding bigger and better and futuristic technologies and all the challenges that comes along with it. And I told him, please talk about all the challenges. I hope all of you walk away saying these are all the opportunities where you can solve the problems here, not in the same way everybody has done, but in a different way, different mindset. Because one thing, when Dr. Inge Chung was talking this morning, you mentioned the growth of the fabs in size, driven by the TV application to bigger and bigger fabs. But nobody has really taken on productivity as a challenge. And in other words, for the same investment cost, can you make more? That would reduce the amount of growing in scale. So those are kind of a different way of thinking of the same problem that would be useful for the mobile phone industry, which is driving a different sort of needs. So I met Professor John Suk, I said earlier. We met maybe 10, 12 years ago while Josh was moving to India. That's when I met Dr. Suk. He was a senior VP at Samsung Electronics, which later on spun off the Samsung Display, which you all know today. So we have the senior person, executive at Samsung Electronics, and then formerly the head of R&D as well. Now a professor at Korea University. You'll also hear another talk from another senior person from Samsung, ex-Samsung, Dr. Shin Lin later, on a different aspect of display trends. But let me ask Professor Suk to come on over here and tell us all about how difficult it is to make displays, the future displays, and what great challenges lie ahead of us.
Okay, thank you.